Good, everybody. This is Justin from the RC and Coffee YouTube channel and Facebook page. As always, if you haven't had a chance to do so, please consider supporting us by subscribing to the YouTube channel and joining the multiple Facebook pages. So a couple days ago, I posted a video of the LC80. So here goes. It's on its back now. It's getting worked on. So the LC80, which is basically a kit called the RUN80 from a company called RC Run. Basically, you can purchase the chassis on its own. I don't know if the wheels come with that. Definitely not these wheels, but wheels in general come with the kit. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The reason why I don't know this is because I bought the kit pre-mounted, pre-painted, pre-weathered, pre-installed, pre-everything from JsScale, a company that is usually specialized in Range Rovers rather. They are extremely good at putting together very, very detailed rides. So everything was there with the exception of the electronics. The motor wasn't there. So I installed my electronics. I used a Hobbywing 1080, and apologize for the mess. This was actually very tidy. And I used the wheel wells provided by JsScale to be able to run. So you can see there's holes there to be able to run my wires on the side. So as I was trying so I finished the programming of the ESC, and I was doing a couple of wheel spins to see if everything was going well. And I noticed a little bit of slippage, what seemed to be slippage in the transmission. And I did, it took me 2 minutes of research to find out that this transmission is actually, the Achilles heel of this chassis. I don't even know if I can get this transmission on its own, which is a huge problem. We'll get to that later on. But I had to basically dismantle this entire kit. So by wanting to have a finished product, I ended up, tearing it apart, and I'll be putting it back together, which, in the end is a good thing because now I know what's in there. So we'll start with the good. So the good, in the essence, the idea behind the transmission itself, it's really interesting. So the rig, and some of you may have seen this, and so, a lot of people have been complaining about what I'm about to say, but I think it's a really good thing. I think it's a plus. This rig is unbelievably front heavy. I think it's even more so than my Desert Runner Hero with the 2-speed transmission. So that is pretty telling, and that's a pickup truck. It's quite shocking, actually. The transmission itself, unbelievably scale. You could see the holes in there, the kind of the heat, I'll call them heat sinks. They're not heat sinks, but they're for to dissipate heat in a real transmission. It's very, very impressive. Look at the thickness of the walls. I mean, it's just work of art. And a gentleman on the RC Run Facebook page did mention that this was, in essence, very similar to the scale realistic transmission produced by Team Raffi, which is notorious for being unreliable. Now, when you look at it right now, it seems really sturdy. I mean, everything is the gears are metal, and they went out of their ways to you could see the bearings. That's sealed bearings there. I don't know if is it going to focus. Yes, here we go. The other one, because it's in contact with not even in contact with the outside world. It's in contact with the T case there. But very, very nice touch. Now, what happened in my case, the slippage, it was due to the fact that it's not the gears themselves. It's the fact that, I don't know if you can see, but the motor mount was not properly mounted with these screws here. So these guys are okay, but not these guys. So I'll take care of that. So obviously that created a little bit of slippage, which I will address now, so that I don't destroy this transmission, which appears to be rather fragile to start to begin with. So the scale factor, really, really interesting. What else? I was able to relatively easily run my wires from the front to the back. It also has to do with the fact that I basically used the, you know, this tiny battery there, and I'm putting it where a tank would be sitting, or a spare wheel, or an undercarriage spare wheel. So essentially, it takes it puts a bit of weight at the back, a little bit, but it enables me to really cleanly run my wires to the back. So that was nice. Um, I did notice a ton of possible adjustments with the suspensions. That was a concern at first, and I will actually show you. Here's a shock tower. That's a front shock tower. So a gentleman on this on the Facebook the RUN80 Facebook page, sorry, this won't focus, was wondering how to change the suspensions, because these guys right here are friction shocks, and these guys are, well, it's only a spring. Well, if you look at it, you can simply actually, here, that's a better, here you go. This is what it looks like when it's not into the shock tower. So essentially like a normal shock if you don't put the rod end. Another way that you can do this, if you have shorter shocks, the shock tower comes with a bunch of little holes like that. It would present itself in this direction. You could technically mount a spring here if you keep the rod end, of course, and maybe add a bunch of spacers, and you should be okay. So that's one way of doing it. One thing to keep in mind, the front shocks are a lot longer than the rear ones. But speaking of the rear, I believe, let's see, I believe it's a similar scenario in the rear. Yeah, it's a similar situation in the rear. I think they have rod ends. Yes, they do. I can't show it, but the rear shocks have rod ends, which a more natural swap can be performed in the rear, more so or more easily so than the front. In terms of solidity, well, I can already see that I can't really show that from here, but there's a motor mount, or a transmission / motor mount, where my just under there, you can't really see it, but that's already broken on one side. It holds with it holds fine. I mean, it's already there's a another one on the right hand side, and the transmission assembly kind of screws into this plate, this bottom plate there. So it's fine. It's really solid. I'm not worried, but something to keep in mind. The quality of the metals, it reminds me of what I've seen on the BRX-01. Speaking of the BRX-01, this is no BRX-01. This thing is extremely noisy. It reminds me, and not just because it's moving, I can tell, it really reminds me of the Red Cat Gen 8, the first generation, which had a really unrefined transmission. Not necessarily a bad one or not solid one, but unrefined, but 10 times worse, like way, way worse. So that gives you a bit of an idea. What else? The access to the access to elements required for maintenance. So essentially opening this transmission. This transmission is right now sitting on its side. It's supposed to be flipped like so, that like this, essentially like that. Unbelievably not practical. Basically, there's holes on the sides that you unscrew a bunch of screws, and these screws are way too short. So basically, I'll show you an example. That's one of them, and it's like completely hidden, wedged well within the transmission casing, and they're really hard to take out. You basically have to use these guys to be able to go and fetch them from inside the transmission casing, which sounds weird. Just like, give us longer screws. That problem solved. So that was kind of weird. There's like, clearly the scale factor is way more important in this entire thing than practicality. Practicality took a back seat, like it's probably riding in a different car somewhere behind. It's yeah, not ideal. But the good thing is it felt like servicing a real car, and I really mean it. I went from being slightly frustrated to actually very frustrated to being, okay, well that's different, that's interesting, and in a good way, I would say. So also something that I do not like, they use a lot, and you can see it from this side. They use a lot of bolts like this. If they had thicker metal or even a plastic plate, because they really don't use plastic with the exception of actually the front of the engine assembly and the top of the engine assembly. They could have used, let go of the bolts, and that obviously makes it a lot easier to open things up because you don't have to grab the bolt from the other side, and basically it's half the job to do to come to the same result. So that's one thing. What else? What else? What else? There was something else, I believe. Let's see. Well, if it comes back to mind, I shall let you know. Oh, yeah. Well, the steering, the Panhard link here, rod rather, it's super close to the. You can't see it there because I removed the rad, but it's super close to the rad, depending on how you connect your servo horn. So just keep that in mind. You may actually break your your rad, your fan. No, the rad's are in the fan. There's that. Oh, here you can see the broken metal piece from there. Right here. Yeah, so you basically have to dismantle this entire thing to do any kind of maintenance on it. I've put a 20 kilogram servo on there. It seems fine actually because I was able to program the 1080 so that it brings 7.4 volts to the to the servo. So it's quite reactive. So I'm not disappointed there. Oh, right. I know what it is. All right, so when the transmission was put together, okay, sorry, it was on like this, like so. You can see the holes there for the screws. Basically, you see the ledge on top here, where my thumb is. Well, this piece here was riding right on top, and it kind of held the two pieces together. They did something that I thought was incredibly, not well thought out. The cap. The cap is basically sitting on top of this and kind of holds the two pieces together. The problem is that you have to glue the cap, otherwise it won't stay in place and you're going to lose it, and it's already difficult as is to get parts for this rig. But then you basically have to like almost damage it every time you want to service this transmission. You get to pry it open, literally. So that I thought was kind of a dumb idea, to be honest. But yeah, besides that, it's interesting to say the least. Very, very interesting. So I sent a message to Asia Tees to see if they would send another transmission or at least have spare parts. Email them maybe at least 5 or 6 AliExpress vendors. And if that doesn't work, well, Chris from GCM Racing, I'm going to try to install one of these. And as a matter of fact, if you do have a kit, or if you, I think it's just a matter of coming up with the right brackets there. This to me is a really good alternative because it's very scale. You don't have all the the nonsense doodads at the front there, and obviously this is a proven transmission. It won't break, easy to service, etc. I'm gonna do a swap or attempt to do a swap with one of these guys, which I'm also working on. And it's interesting to see the similarities with the architecture here, with the separate springs and dampers, and you have sorry. Those are coilovers on this guy. I was thinking of the C-Max, my bad. But anyways, that's it for today. I will let you know how it goes. I'll put this thing back together, grease it properly, and off we go. It seemed to have I really like the gearing, super low. That thing has a ton of torque. That's a 55T, and it was on the 3S on the 3S battery. But wow, in terms of torque, no problem whatsoever. Way, 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 way better than the Desert Runner Hero in that regards. All right, guys. Hope I shall talk to you when this thing is fixed. I'll let you know how it goes, and if I run into further issues, I will let you know as well. Cheers.